something that's of worth that will bless your heart. I'll bring you more than a song, for a song in itself is not what you have required. You search much deeper within, through the way things appear. You're looking into my heart. I'm coming back to the heart of worship, and it's all about you. It's all about you, Jesus. I'm sorry, Lord, for the thing I made. When it's all about you, it's all about you, Jesus. King of endless word, no one could express how much you deserve. Though I'm weak and poor, all I have is yours, every single breath. I'll bring you more than a song, for a song in itself is not what you have required. You search much deeper within, through the way things appear. You're looking into my heart. I'm coming back to the heart of worship, and it's all about you. It's all about you, Jesus. I'm sorry, Lord, for the thing I've made. When it's all about you, it's all about you, Jesus. I'm coming back to the heart of worship, and it's all about you. It's all about you, Jesus. I'm sorry, Lord, for the thing I've made. When it's all about you, it's all about you, Jesus. I'm sorry, Lord, for the thing I've made. When it's all about you, it's all about you, Jesus.
Hey, that's what it's all about, is say it's all about Jesus. Good morning, everybody. Thank you for being here. You guys online this morning. We are online live, second service. Last week, our camera was like green screening every once in a while. And the IT team went into work this week trying to get things together, and they had to put up a different camera, and it was good first service. I hear everything worked well, but we're running again the second service so that anybody missed out or whatever can get in there. So all that to say, our online people and stuff, this has got to look different up here. First service, somebody walked in, they're getting baptized next week, and they were like, oh, was I supposed to be baptized this week? No, calm down. No, we do this a week before. This is such a big celebration. We love to put it up ahead of time. We actually, during the last 2 years, haven't used our normal tub. We've used that horse tank, cow tank, whatever you call it. And we're going back to this for this Sunday. Some people are seeing this today for the first time. I don't know why people see this and think it's my hot tub. It's baptismal. And next week, one service. What time? 10 a.m. You guys are the ones where you really got to remember that. 9:30 people, they forget. They'll just be here a little early. If you forget, you'll be coming in towards the end of the service. So next week, celebration, baptismal service. If you guys online, I challenged you a couple weeks ago. We got this online church, people, different states and places and all. If there's somebody, your family or whatever, is interested in baptism in-house, please talk to us yet this week even. Our website has a great place, drop down in the middle section there. You drop down on our homepage and you'll see baptism in there. And you can check out what it says there about baptism and all. And of course, in-house, if you've got questions, please let us know. We're looking forward to our time of celebration next week. The week after that, March 13th, Tom Darby from our own community, businessman in our community, also an author, written a book called Marketplace Missionaries. He's in love with the Lord, and he loves to see in the marketplace, people come to Jesus. I've sat and talked with him and heard the different ideas that he and the people that serve in ministry through their business. You won't want to miss this. Both services that Sunday, 9:30 and 11 a.m. We'll be back to those two normal services. You guys, Wednesday night Bible study. By the way, I love our Wednesday night Bible study. And I think everybody enjoys it that participates. It's both online, 7 o'clock, and in-house. Right now we're studying through the Gospel of Luke. This week, Pastor John's going to take a couple weeks for me. He's going to be filling in, so I want to challenge you to become a part of that. We dig deeper. That's what we say on Wednesday nights. We dig deeper in the Word of God. And we have fun doing it and learn all kinds of stuff about God and His Word. So jump in there. You can find all of our Wednesday night Bible information on our website, Bible study information on our website as well. That's the first column, ministries, on our website. And then you go over to Wednesday night and you can download all of the Wednesday night Bible study material. Hey, this coming week, we got something cool that's going to happen. Next week, or last week, I said to you about, one of the ways we know we trust God, I talked about practical ways. And the first thing came to mind is to give. And our congregation's been giving online, and the congregation online and in-house has been giving in miraculous ways. Thank you so much. And because of that, then we're going to start a project this week. Should be done this week. The contractor said they could do it in a week. But back when we were remodeling out the foyer stuff, and then we replaced the roofs on these buildings and the units there, before that it had leaked in here, and the ceiling in different places is in very poor repair. And so this week, Monday, contractors are going to come and they're going to begin the repair on that. So we're not, like Wednesday night Bible study might have to be in another room or something, but we're excited about that as we come into Easter. We're going to be finishing up some of these projects for that special day when we get together for Easter. Last week I mentioned about the acquisition of the van, and we didn't actually have it here at the church property. If you've never seen our church van, it sits right out the window out there. Be sure as you go out this morning, feel free to take a look at it. You'll love it. I know you'll appreciate that we're going to have that from now on for ministry. By the way, I'm not sure Pastor Ted Campbell, I got to speak to him yesterday. Him and Evelyn are special to our congregation for a long time. They led and directed our senior adult ministries, and everybody loves them to pieces. Ted Campbell is 91 years old today. Yeah, let's praise God for his life. Today is his birthday. And so I called him yesterday in recognition of that. Told him, because I know they watch online in the morning, so I think he probably on in the first service, but maybe he's on in this service as well. So congratulations to him. Please, those of you that know him, and if you don't, call the church office, you get an address or something, send them a card, let them know that you love and appreciate them. They're homebound right now, and so what a wonderful moment to honor them and to thank God for their lives and for all they've done for the ministry here at Friendship Wesleyan Church. You can check out our announcements online. Pick up the little bulletin going out the door this morning if you'd rather have it in paper form. Giving is the same way. You can give electronically, online, Facebook, our website. In-house here, we have the boxes as you go out the doors this morning, and debit card reader out in the foyer. Order of service today is going to be a little bit different than you're familiar with. It's funny how we get in routine and we don't even realize it and know it. So it'll be switched up a little bit today, and you'll see in just a few moments. Let's continue in music worship.
Stand, will you, please? Waymaker, miracle worker, promise keeper, light in the darkness, my God, that is who you are. You are waymaker, miracle worker, promise keeper, light in the darkness, my God, that is who you are. You are here, touching every heart. I worship you. I worship you. You are here, healing every heart. I worship you. I worship you. You are here, turning lives around. I worship you. I worship you. You are here, mending every heart. I worship you. I worship you. You are waymaker, miracle worker, promise keeper, light in the darkness, my God, that is who you are. You are waymaker, miracle worker, promise keeper, light in the darkness, my God, that is who you are. 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 You are waymaker, miracle worker, promise keeper, light in the darkness, my God, that is who you are. You are waymaker, miracle worker, promise keeper, light in the darkness, my God, that is who you are. Even when I don't see it, you're working. Even when I don't feel it, you're working. You never stop working. You never stop working. Even when I don't see it, you're working. Even when I don't feel it, you're working. You never stop working. You never stop working. Even when I don't see it, you're working. Even when I don't feel it, you're working. You never stop working. You never stop working. Even when I don't see it, you're working. Even when I don't feel it, you're working. You never stop working. You never stop working. Waymaker, miracle worker, promise keeper, light in the darkness, my God, that is who you are. You are waymaker, miracle worker, promise keeper, light in the darkness, my God, that is who you are. 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 You are here, moving in our midst. I worship you. I worship you. Oh God, today we know that you are here. You're here amongst us, working in this place. Because wherever two or three are gathered in your name, which we are, you promised that you would be here with us. And we ask that you would move in us and amongst us. Because, God, we know that in you there are miracles that happen each and every day in our lives. We know that you keep your promises. We know that in the darkness you shine light. That's who you are. What an awesome God you are. And so we come today and we lift you up. We give you praise. We give you honor. We give you glory because it is due to you. And because we are grateful to do it. And Father God, we want you to move today. Any way you desire. That we might be moved, changed, comforted, healed, new. Lord, whatever it is that each individual needs, will you do that work? And whatever we need as a congregation, as a collective, will you do that work, Lord? Because we want your will in our lives. And so we praise you and give you thanks. In the name of Jesus, amen. You may be seated.
And grab a Bible. Open up to Matthew 26, John chapter 11. If you need a Bible, I got people in the back who are watching. Just slip your hand up if you'd like one right in your hands. Maybe it's on your handheld device, YouVersion, something like that. Pop it open. Maybe you just want to sit and listen to me read the text this morning. But if you'd like a Bible, you're in-house, lift your hand up. You guys at home, you're on your own. Never thought I'd say that in service, but you should have a Bible somewhere in the house. You can go grab it if you don't have it. Matthew chapter 26. We begin a journey today. You want to take a trip with me? We're going to go on a trip. I love road trips, and we're going to start a journey today. A journey to East. You know what this Wednesday is? Do you know what it is? Some people really recognize, have services. Ash Wednesday. Okay, it kicks off the Lenten season. Starts the journey to Easter, 40 days. Lent is 40 days to Easter minus Sundays. If you go to the calendar and you're trying to find 40 days, you got to leave the Sundays out, and it'll come up close, okay? It's the Lent season that some churches, recognize every single year. It's kind of like Advent preparation for the holiday that's coming. It's this Lent season, this journey represents sacrifice. 40 days, that's what Jesus spent in the wilderness, and fasted. And so there's a lot of churches, a lot of people. Did you notice the grocery store ads, and they've got a Lent section, and it's all fish because you don't eat meat, and and so it's all fish, and so people will sacrifice during Lent. Maybe some of you, in honor of Jesus' sacrifice for us. I remember when I was in Bible school, undergraduate work, we had a professor. He drank coffee big time every day. He was drinking coffee all day long, right? But for Lent, 40 days, he would give up coffee for 40 days. And we could he challenged us to come by the desk and to make sure, and his coffee cup was full of water every day. So he gave up coffee. So it's a journey of sacrifice that some people recognize in different ways. This journey is also known as the Via Dolorosa. The way, that's why I said let's go on a road trip. The road we're going to be on is the Via Dolorosa, the way of sorrow, the way of suffering, and the grief. And during this 40 days, we recognize the suffering of Jesus. And some people recognize the Stations of the Cross. I don't know if you've ever heard that. The Stations of the Cross are biblical stories, pieces to Jesus' journey from the Garden of Gethsemane to being put in the tomb after his sacrifice on the cross and dying and being laid in the tomb. And there are 14 different stations of the cross, or headed to the cross. And so it's a journey of grief that leads to celebration, right? And we kind of every year, we lean into the celebration. I do. It's just kind of how God's wired me and made me. And we like celebrate Easter every Sunday. Today's going to be a little bit different for you because I'm trying to lean out of that a little bit because the grief comes before the celebration. The celebration is Easter, April 17th. 2 services. We talked about this in worship planning. 2 services, 9 o'clock and 11 a.m. with the kids' stuff in the middle, okay? So Easter, big celebration, greatest comeback ever. He's alive, and we're going to celebrate. But we got to take this journey of grief first. And grief makes us uncomfortable, I think. And it's a lesson I'm learning more and more. I've walked with a lot of people through grief, 30-some years in ministry, but the last couple of years have taught me new things about grief that I'm learning along with you. Matter of fact, I'll put my little disclaimer here. We're going to lean into this whole thing of grief today. And for all the journeys I've walked with people, I've learned so much, and I really feel like, matter of fact, this sermon, I said to the first service crowd, I need only 3 pages cut in half for my 30, 35, 40-minute sermon or whatever, and I was up like 8 pages of thoughts and ideas, and God kind of said, it's going to be okay. This is a huge thing. There's books written on grief, right? There's grief counselors who get degrees in studying it, and I realize that, but in dealing with the issue, like it's kind of like, I've really struggled this week because dealing with the issue of grief, it's a deep soul thing according to the Bible. It's a deep soul thing. And it goes deep. So I know this morning we're digging down there. And for my lack of knowing stuff about grief, my goal, God made it clear to me there's only one goal in the message today, and it's going to be a little unusual. I'll explain it as we go along. It's going to be a little bit different than my normal way. But so grief, the first thing I want you to know, because I'm going to talk into this, loss and grief go hand in hand. I'm not sure 100% of the time, but loss and grief go hand in hand. When we're talking about grief, we're generally speaking talking about losing something, okay? And matter of fact, from a medical website, I love this definition of grief. Let me read it for you. Grief is a normal response to loss during or after a disaster or other traumatic event. Grief can happen in response to loss of life, as well as to drastic changes to daily routines and ways of life that usually bring us comfort and a feeling of stability. Did you hear that? Because one of the things we need to say right up here, we talk about grief, and in our culture and everything, we immediately go to some loss of life and some memorial service. Listen to me, our grief the last couple of years is way bigger than just the loss of life we've experienced. That's been huge. And maybe that's a big puzzle for some of us. Been a lot of loss of life in family and friends and stuff for me and Cindy. Maybe in your life too these last couple of years. But there's so much else to it. And so it's out of that journey and then, being brought into the journey of grief with so many people that we're going to take this. The Lord impressed me because this whole thing with the stages of the cross and stuff like that, it's normally not my kind of thing either. But the Lord was just like, this is the journey that we need to go on now, and I want you to go. And take Friendship Wesleyan, and let's go on this journey, the Via Dolorosa, the way of sorrow, and let's travel this before we get to the celebration. And the celebration going to be something. I'm getting the feeling, Dan. But so not just death that we've walked in the last couple of years. I don't want to be too redundant. I've mentioned this before, but relationships have changed. Matter of fact, in that definition, it says to as well as to drastic changes to daily routines and ways of life. Whoo, boy, that's happened. Still happening. Matter of fact, I've kind of been in this whole journey like, boy, is there a day or a week that we don't end up with something else going on in this journey of sorrow? And I got to say this, because when it comes to all the issues, I think that we're experiencing a grief crisis right now. I just think that. If grief is so deep, and I'm kind of right about myself and how I've preached and taught into it and about us as a culture and society, the way we deal with grief. I think we got a little grief crisis, big grief crisis going on in our communities, in our homes, in our lives. So we're going to take a journey with Jesus, his grief and sorrow. I was looking for practical ways to do this. Can you throw that image up there for me, tech team back there, that first image? So I mentioned the stations, looking for a practical way for us to take this journey together. And the Wesleyan Church, we'd already started on the Stations of the Cross, right, Dan? We talked about this, and we decided on the Stations of the Cross. And then I was looking for, okay, is there any practical way for the congregation to experience this? Kind of small, but maybe it'd be impactful. And I found on the Wesleyan website this whole Station of the Cross theme and idea. It's really cool. Matter of fact, right now it's out in the foyer. You guys online, it's on our website, middle of the website, Station of the Cross. I heard first service that it's been updated and everything's there. So here's how it works. So each week we're going to put up images. This is one of them. It's out there on the wall. You'll see it. The Station of the Cross, Station 1 in the Garden of Gethsemane, my soul is crushed with grief to the point of death. There's actually 3 images out there right now because this week we're going to cover those. I don't have 14 sermons to preach all the stations, and that's good, that's fine. But they're going to go up during each week, whatever ones we cross. This is a little devotional book, okay? So you open up to Devotion 1, and it's about Station 1. So then you can stand there and look at the image and read this. You guys at home, if you do this at home, you guys in-house, maybe do this at home too. You do it with your family. You bring up that image. It's on the website. And you do the little devotional together and pray into that. I wasn't sure about this whole thing. Yesterday I was putting it all together, and I had grandkids that were helping me. And they were helping and everything else. And in the middle of the project somewhere, one of them went, "What does all this mean, Papa?" And I had one of the most incredible conversations with my grandkids about the suffering of Jesus. And then in the first service, got to come to the altar and pray with them. Because these kids have lost big. Dan, I wasn't even like, God, what are you going to do in this service this morning? And when my grandkids came up and shared with me their loss this morning, I knew something big was taking place and happening. You can journey with us, okay? Out in the foyer online, you can check those things out. So let's start our journey. It starts in the Garden of Gethsemane, Matthew chapter 26. I want to read that for you, Matthew chapter 26. Go to verse 36, okay? Let me read down through verse 38. Then Jesus went with his disciples to a place called Gethsemane, and he said to them, "Sit here while I go over there and pray." He took Peter and the other 2 sons of Zebedee, the Gospels let us know that's James and John, along with him, and he began to be sorrowful and troubled. Remember that phrase. Then he said to them, "My soul is overwhelmed with sorrow to the point of death. Stay here and keep watch with me." Going a little further, he fell with his face to the ground and prayed. Now this text, everybody knows, right? "My Father, if it's possible, may this cup be taken from me, yet not as I will, but as you will." Could you feel the weight of that verse when I read it to you? My soul is overwhelmed with sorrow to the point of death. I got to tell you, in both these texts, John 11, when we get there, Matthew 26, and I just said it a moment ago, we think of Matthew 26, the Garden of Gethsemane, we always think of that when Jesus said, "Let this cup pass from me, yet not my will, but yours be done." I want to tell you something. The real emotion, when you really dig and you do a little deeper digging, the real emotion comes in that verse 38, "My soul is overwhelmed to the point of death." Do you feel the weight in that? The weight of the world was on Jesus, right? The weight of the world. Our sins. Of course, he knew it was coming in his death and all of that weight. And so Jesus, listen to me. It's clear in this text anyway, Jesus grieved. My soul is overwhelmed with sorrow to the point of death. The New Living Translation, these are paraphrases, but I think they just gave an interesting, listen as I read it to you. "My soul is crushed with grief to the point of death." International Standard Version, "I'm so deeply grieved that I feel I'm about to die. So what do you do with that, right? I mean, what emotions? And I think we have a hard time with this. I just look at what we do with God and Jesus, and I go, I think we have a hard time with this. God with emotions. Jesus with emotions. I got to thinking about, I was talking to Sue as I prepared for this, some of the others a little bit, and saying, as I really began to think about, like, our image of God and his emotions. The first thing that hit me is most people know God has at least one emotion, right? Everybody, if you ask most people, everybody can say, yeah, he's angry. He's usually mad at me, right? Our image of God is anger, right? So we know that God's got this emotion of anger. And then I started to think of Jesus, right? You know, what emotions we had. And I started thinking of the media that I'm familiar with. I haven't seen some of the new stuff, but the Jesus film and stuff like that. And I thought, you know what? Jesus is like always, even like monotone, boring, and control, no matter what he's saying. Even the temple, the courtyard where he gets mad, I've watched some of those, and he's just like too in control. I mean, it's not really much emotion to it. And things he says in there, right? We remove the emotion. And I thought about the images. You know, what images do I know of Jesus where there's emotion? I thought of the one, I don't know if you've ever seen it, where he's playing with kids and they're laughing and he's laughing. It's hard for us to imagine God laughing, right? So you don't get a lot of images of Jesus laughing. And then I thought of the ones of grieving, and the only one that came to my mind was the one where Jesus is looking at the world and he's got a tear coming down his cheek. One tear. And he's crying over the world, but it's just one. You ever seen that image? You won't see a lot of images of Jesus with emotion. Matter of fact, I got to tell you, John 11, Jesus wept, 35, shortest verse in the Bible, in English, not in other languages, but in English, shortest verse in the Bible. And I don't think I've ever in a sermon said I Googled this. I don't say that a lot. I Googled this. I went to Google Images and I Googled Jesus wept. I wanted to see what wept looked like. There's one that tried, but for the most part, thousands of images. This is about the best I got. Do you have that up there? Jesus totally in control, looking towards heaven. And you can't see it in-house. You guys online, you probably see it better. This one actually has like 2 tears. There's a couple of them there. And Jesus is like totally in control, even of his weeping. Have you ever wept? Did I ask you that? Have you ever wept? This was not my image of weeping, because I've wept, and this wasn't it. I'm like, didn't he like lose it a little? Because when I've wept, the few times I've wept, I kind of like lost it. And I couldn't actually talk to the people. I've done it to the board once or twice. They're awesome grieving partners. I'll get to that in a few moments, I think, if the Lord brings it back to me. But the last thing we can imagine, you can take that picture down. The last thing we can imagine is Jesus losing it. And I'm going to tell you why I use these phrases, losing it or falling apart. I don't think in English they probably express, in our English language, they don't express well what really happens with Jesus. So I'm going to take you into the Greek a little bit so we can see that. But let me point out some things just real quick that I think are true in this whole issue. God has emotions. Did you know that? Have you read through the Word of God and seen where God has emotions? Matter of fact, here's a little list. We're not going to hang out on this. Here's a little list of the emotions in God's Word. Love, right? You know that, right? Love. God is love. The emotion of love is expressed. Joy. Hate. Go dig on these. Jealousy. Compassion. Did you know God laughs? Psalm 2:4. He who sits in the heavens laughs. What does that look like, God laughing? You ever have God laugh at you? You ever have God laugh with you? I hope so, because God laughs. And one very clear emotion that God has is grief. Jesus grieved. But here's what I want to say. God has emotions. You were created with emotions for a reason. I think especially the emotion of grief, we act like it's some sin we have. And how did we ever end up with that? Because you were created with it. It's a very healthy, very good emotion, by the way. And you were created with emotions. You were created in the image of God. Now, I understand in the land of death, that's where we are, and we're going to the land of living. Here, things like the emotion of grief can be tough stuff. But God created us with emotions on purpose. Jesus wept, not cry. I'll come back to this in a moment. Not cry. Jesus wept. You go through all kinds of translations. You will find one that says something to the effect he was like crying a lot or something. But every 30 translations I looked, they all said, wept. He wept. John 11:35, one of the most profound texts to me. We'll come back to that in a moment. As a matter of fact, that's the next place we're going to go. But here's some thoughts I wanted to share along with this as well. My notes, I'm trying to make them smaller. Outline went to somewhere else. I don't know exactly what happened here, but here's some thought. Listen to me. Remember I said that grief is associated with loss? Sometimes we lose, and it isn't fixed in a day. Sometimes we lose, and it's not. And I thought even, the Lord helped me take this little journey of how I preach and teach and stuff like that. And I do lean out a lot of times. Like, if I ever preach on grief and loss and stuff like that, I like by the end of service that we've come back around to victory in Jesus, right? I think that's a good thing, but God kind of said, we don't need to always do that. Sometimes there's loss, and it's not fixed in a day. And it's not fixed in one sermon. And this last 2 years has been a whole lot of loss that continues to go on. I think about, and you guys, second service, a lot of you were in on this. Remember, we put the bell up. We rang the bell for we were going to ring it till COVID was over. You remember that? And I remember, like, this just kept going on. We're going out there ringing. We're praying. We wanted our community here. We're praying against the virus. And this kept going on, and I remember thinking, what are we going to do? Because, like, we're ringing a bell every Sunday, but it's appearing more and more and more like this virus isn't going anywhere because we're ringing a bell, you know what I mean? And we were having to lean into God's bigger than us and his plan. Because I don't want to ever say anything in this moment right now that's like we didn't trust in God. In your grief, there's this trust in God, but also acknowledging that sometimes we don't get the prayers the way we want to get the prayers, and God's God, and that's the way it is. And his plan is better and bigger, and eternal stuff's been happening. Don't get me wrong. Eternal stuff's been happening in this loss. But we haven't recognized that loss happens sometimes, and it's not fixed in a day. So eventually, I forget how we brought it to a close, right? And the bell is wonderful, and we'll never forget that. But it was the prayer that went along with that bell didn't turn out exactly like we had planned and prayed into. The phone calls of parents and the kids and what they're going through, and relationships, and people saying to me, person after person after person after person in the middle of this, saying, hey, I've got a friend, I got a loved one, and PK, you got to know, they told me they never want to talk to me again, or until I do this or this, that, and the other, we're never talking, stuff like this. That was happening. Whoo! Over and over and over. Parent who said to me, I'm not sure I know my teenager anymore. I don't know what they're going through at school, and I can't believe what's happening. And I know that a prayer right there is not going to fix what's happening that day. Phone call. Many of you walked this journey with us from my 5-year-old great nephew. I've been in a journey of prayer and fasting and everything, you guys too. Both with Liberty University, the whole of the South, it seemed like. Little Ethan, 5-year-old great nephew, who'd been diagnosed with a terrible genetic disease, but in our prayers, he got better. And then when my niece called me in the middle of the pandemic and said, Uncle Kevin, they just called and said he's not going to make it. And we stood in the hospital room as little 5-year-old raised his hands to Jesus and worshiped with us as he passed away and went to be with the Lord. In our prayers, the way we had asked weren't answered the way we thought. Monstrous loss. The times here where we prayed for specific healing, and people call the Beck family and Diane, and we prayed specifically, and she got better, and then a few days later was gone, and families calling and saying, Grandma's got COVID, the whole family's got COVID, or whatever else lost health. lost, whatever. Remember that thing said that things aren't like they used to be. I walked in the grocery store the other day and I was like, this ain't like it used to be. The prices, the empty shelf. We can laugh, but there's also this sense of grief and loss. Matter of fact, our grief is communal. I don't think we acknowledge that. I'm not going to go into that. The Jews used to have communal grief, right? And they expressed it, and we're going through a communal grief. So the result of loss is grief. Sometimes we lose. It isn't fixed in a day. It's a matter of fact, I meant to throw in here, it's a process. I did a little bit digging in recent months. I was so intrigued by what we were going through with grief and how we do it as Americans in the culture. And I don't want to, I'm not like making a broad generalization, and I think this has got its place and everything else, but our traditional way of doing grief and the loss of a loved one is a few days of memorial service and then let's move on. Life's got to continue. Kind of our traditional way of doing grief. Pandemic even changed that, where we started big time. We needed to do cremations and everything else, and services are being held off for a long time. The journey of grief gets stretched out. Some families are still waiting. And grief, and I'm like, how do we do this? Because grief is a process. You ever heard of the stages of grief? In the old days, there were like 4. It started with denial. And I've watched this stuff, right? I've watched this. It's biblical. Because grief is a process, not just a moment. Denial, anger, grief, and then acceptance. Now there's like 7. 7 stages. And I've walked with people. If you know anything about those and you're watching in your grief sometimes, listen to me. That can happen in a moment. It can happen in days. It can take years. Matter of fact, my grandfather died at 60 years old. They had all kinds of dreams and hope. And I've, to this day, rarely seen a person grieve like my grandmother did. A year later, she got Jesus. She lived for Jesus the next 30 years till she passed away. But 30 years later, I could ask her about my grandfather, and we would shed tears. Grief is a journey. It's a process. It isn't always over in a day. Healing from loss begins by acknowledging the grief. And we don't take time to grieve, and I think maybe we just don't know how to grieve. I think that's what I said. When you look at Jesus grieving and the biblical images and God and then what we do with that, I think maybe it's just that we don't know how to grieve. And you know what happens when we don't grieve like we were meant to? Let's John 11 real quick. I'm going to wrap this up. Dan, I'm going to try to wrap this thought up. You know what happens when we don't grieve like we were meant to? In John chapter, this is so interesting to me. Remember over in Matthew 26, I said that whole thing, we focus on, let this cup pass from me, but it's really about what's said before that he's overwhelmed to the point of death by sorrow. Same in this text. I thought this text was about the Jesus wept in 11:35. That's actually kind of the result of the emotion that happens in this text. Pick it up at verse 33 there. Verse 33, and let me read down through 36. When Jesus saw her, by the way, this is Lazarus. He's passed away. Jesus has waited too long. And Mary and Martha come in their grief. They're upset that Jesus didn't show up on time. And now we pick this up. Let me pick it up, verse 32, so you get a little context. When Mary reached the place where Jesus was and saw him, she fell at his feet and said, "Lord, if you'd been here, my brother would not have died." When Jesus saw her weeping and her with her also, those who'd come along with her also weeping, he was deeply moved in spirit and troubled. Key verse, by the way. "Where have you laid him?" he asked. "Come and see, Lord," they replied. Jesus wept. He did because of what he experienced in 33. Okay? Then the Jews said, "See how he loved him." All I want to point out to you is whatever it was that happened to Jesus, they all saw it. It was something visible. That picture on the screen of Jesus with one tear and you can't see it from a seat, that's not what happened. They saw it, and they knew it. And I've always focused in on Jesus wept. And so I did a little word study on there, and I'll tell you, I ended up with, because that Jesus wept, it doesn't mean cried, but it still does mean some sort of a controlled cry. That people could see it, but it wasn't like I was imagining with the word weep, the way I've experienced it. So I went back to verse 33. He was deeply moved in spirit and trouble, right? And actually, that's that. If back in Matthew 26, remember I said, remember that verse 37. It said he began to be sorrowful and troubled. Those are key words to the emotion that we read about after that. But that little two-word phrase, deeply moved in John. Listen to this. Here's the Greek. You're going to be surprised by this. Deeply moved, to snort like an angry horse, expressing strong indignation, deep feeling that is moved sternly to admonish. Matter of fact, I read through my 30 translations, and one of them had the word angry, that he was angry. And I was like, how do you do that in this text? Because it's not, matter of fact, the people miss it that he's upset about Lazarus. See how he loved him? He knew Lazarus was going to be raised from the dead. His emotions were centered around our grief. Do you get it? He was moved because of the grief he saw in them. And he, with indignation, I've had it happen to me once. Memorial service, I'll never forget it. It was a moving service, and I came out, bagpipe player was playing Amazing Grace. I got in the car, and I just remember one of my kids was with me, and I was crying. And she said, Dad, why are you crying? And I thought and prayed for a minute, and I said, I'm mad. You're mad? Yeah, I'm not mad at God. I'm mad that this is this way. I'm mad that we go through this kind of grief. I'm mad she's got to spend the rest of her life without him. I'm mad that we're so broken. It's funny because there's a translation. Listen to this. When Jesus saw her sobbing and the Jews who'd come with her also sobbing, he was deeply moved in spirit to the point of anger at the sorrow caused by death and was troubled. There it was. He was trembling. By the way, grief and anger are very closely related, I think. No wonder the Greek word is kind of intermixed there. Grief, and the only reason I'm saying that is we're in a grief crisis. And if we're not grieving the way we're supposed to, biblically, we were designed to grieve. And in our culture, the way we do stuff, we generally don't grieve the way we're supposed to. It gets bottled up in there, and it's going to pop out in all kinds of ways. And I thought about making this a big part of the sermon, but let's just look around us. And maybe it's coming out in your life. I know it has in mine in all kinds of ways with my family and other stuff. It's unprocessed grief because I got this vision of what it means to be like Jesus and be strong, and I haven't grieved the way I'm supposed to, and it's turning into all kinds of other stuff. Big time anger in our culture and everything else. We're in a crisis of grief. That other word, troubled, so snort like a horse. Listen to the troubled, where it says there, deeply moved, snort like a horse, in spirit and troubled. Here's that word, to put in motion, to agitate back and forth, to shake to and fro, to set in motion what needs to remain still, to trouble, to agitate, causing inner perplexity from getting too stirred up and upset inside. My soul is overwhelmed this is soul stuff. Jesus said grief is soul stuff. My soul is overwhelmed to the point of death. And here the two words to express the sorrow were very physical reactions that people noticed. Not the best phrase. Don't totally quote me on this. Jesus lost it. And if we don't learn to lose it in our grief, you'll lose it in something else. Blessed are those who mourn, for they will be comforted. You ever heard that verse? That word mourn. Blessed are those who mourn. Listen to this. Mourning, manifested grief, so severe, it takes possession of a person and cannot be hid. Blessed are those whose grief is so deep it can't be hidden, they will be comforted. I was like, Lord, what do you want out of this? He said, because this is huge. This thing is huge. People came up to me after second service. Stan, I've gotten texts from the emotion in the first service. Praise team can go ahead and come up. And the Lord just said, Kevin, just tell everybody, it's okay to grieve. It's okay to grieve. So what we're going to do is we're going to have some music, some time of music. And I was like, God, I had in my mind, by the way, I was going to put images up of loss for our church or loss for me. And God wouldn't allow that. God was like, no. Just ask everybody. And this is where it got kind of cool in the first service where grandkids came up. And I just asked, and they were pretty quick to express loss they've experienced that caused me to start crying again. These kids have been through loss. Matter of fact, parents and everybody, ask your kids and grandkids what loss they've experienced. They're experiencing some huge emotions. And this is good stuff, what we're talking about with God today. It's okay to grieve. We've lost. It's okay to grieve. I don't know if you want to express that by coming up front to pray. Some people did the first service. Maybe you need a grief partner. Maybe you got somebody with you. I love grief partners. This is where I said the administrative board. I've lost it with our leadership a couple times over the years. And I'll tell you what I felt when I was losing it and I couldn't talk to them. I'm sitting there crying. I was so embarrassed. And I felt like, boy, I'm not a very strong pastor. And that's what they're going to think from now on. They've become my best grief team, and I hope for each other, and I hope that I'm returning it. They're the best grief team a person could ever have. Maybe need a grief partner to express that grief with. Maybe you want to stand during the music and just praise. Maybe you want to sit and cry. However the Lord leads you, imagine your loss. Imagine your loss. And God just saying right now, it's okay to grieve. Father, we come to you right now in this moment. Thank you for those incredible words we've passed by so often because we have a problem with grief. Jesus was overwhelmed to the point of death by sorrow. Father, help us in our crisis of grief now to be able to imagine the loss that you're speaking to us about that's been maybe too heavy for us to bear, and we've tried hard to be strong, to repress it, to put it in there, and we need to just grieve. Spirit, move in each one of our lives from the youngest to the oldest.
When you got the news, life will be changing, nothing we can do. The clock is ticking now. All I can think about is knowing I have to move on without you somehow. And I just can't believe that you're the one who's keeping it together. As you hold my hand and say, it's okay to cry, it's okay to fall apart. You don't have to try to be strong when you are not. And it may take some time to make sense of all your thoughts, but you don't have to fight your tears, 'cause there is freedom in every drop. Sometimes the only way to heal a broken heart is when we fall apart. You asked me to sing some songs that I wrote that I can barely speak, can barely play a note. All my tears rush in, falling on my strings, make the sound of these progressions have a different ring. And I hate to say goodbye, knowing this will be the last time we're together. As you close your eyes and say, it's okay to cry, it's okay to fall apart. You don't have to try to be strong when you are not. And it may take some time to make sense of all your thoughts, but don't ever hide your tears, 'cause there is freedom in every drop. Sometimes the only way to heal a broken heart is when we fall apart. You got the gift of mercy, don't ever think it's strange. Not a curse, but it is a blessing to feel other people's pain. Always love without condition, and trust with all your heart. There's healing in the story of your scars. Well, it's been a while since you've been gone, and sometimes I still catch myself trying to call your phone. And all the hopes and dreams we used to talk about are still alive in me, and I just hope I make you proud. Now I'm your legacy, and it's your love still holding me together. I still hear you say, it's okay to cry, it's okay to fall apart. You don't have to try to be strong when you are not. And it may take some time to make sense of all your thoughts, but don't ever hide your tears, 'cause there is freedom in every drop. Sometimes the only way to heal a broken heart is when we fall apart. Sometimes the only way to heal a broken heart is when we fall apart. No matter the grief, He will hunt us down to be with us.
You are not hid. There's never been a moment you were forgotten. You are not hopeless. You have been broken, your innocence stolen. I hear you whisper underneath your breath. I hear your SOS, your SOS. I will send out an army to find you in the middle of the darkest fight. It's true, I will rescue you. There is no distance that cannot be covered over and over. You're not defenseless. I'll be your shelter, I'll be your armor. I hear you whisper underneath your breath.
sorrows like sea billows roll. Whatever my lot, thou hast taught me to say, it is well with my soul. It is well with my soul.
With my soul.
It is well with my soul. Though Satan should buffet, though trials should come, let this blessed assurance control that Christ has regarded my helpless estate and has shed his own blood for my soul. It is well with my soul.
With my soul.
It is well with my soul. And Lord, haste the day when my faith shall be sight. The clouds be rolled back as the scroll. The trump shall resound, and the Lord shall descend. Even so, it is well with my soul. It is well with my soul.
With my soul. It is well. It is
well with my soul.
The grief can be heavy. The sorrow can be deep. But because of Jesus, we know that as he walks with us, that it can be well, right down to our very soul. Because someday, as he rose, we will rise with him. There's a peace I've come to know. And I'm in the wrong key, sorry. There's a peace I've come to know. Though my heart and flesh may fail, there's an anchor for my soul. I can say it is well. Jesus has overcome, and the grave is overwhelmed. The victory is won. He is risen from the dead, and I will rise when he calls my name. No more sorrow, no more pain. I my faith shall be my eyes. Jesus has overcome, and the grave is overwhelmed. The victory is won. He is risen from the dead, and I will rise when He calls my name. No more sorrow, no more pain. I will rise on eagle's wings before my God. Fall on my knees and rise. I will rise. And I hear the voice of many angels sing, worthy is the Lamb. And I hear the cry of every longing heart, worthy is the Lamb. And I hear the voice of many angels sing, worthy is the Lamb. And I hear the cry of every longing heart, worthy is the Lamb, worthy is the Lamb. And I will rise when He calls my name. No more sorrow, no more pain. I will rise on eagle's wings before my God. Fall on my knees and rise. I will rise. I will rise. I will rise. Father God, we have the hope, but in the middle, give us the strength to place our hope in You, to grieve and feel what we need to feel, to work through it, because we don't work through it alone, we work through it with You. Bring comfort, healing, peace, and strength where it's needed. We love You.